Hey, Damian Mason here with a question before we hop into this episode of the Business of Agriculture. If you farm for a living, you employ a lot of amazing technology, from your inputs that you put into the soil to the tractor that you sit in, your combine, and the amazing data that it harvests. But has your soil analytics kept up technologically with everything else in your farming operation? I would venture to say that no, it is not. Sure, you check for your nitrogen, your phosphorus, your potassium, your micronutrients as well. But what about disease pressure? Do you know what diseases and what pests you're going to face next year? No, you don't. But you can now figure that out with Pattern Ag's predictive analytics. Think about it. They can tell you now with testing what the likelihood of facing nasty diseases, things like cyst nematode or sudden death syndrome, what the likelihood of you having this in your field. Then you know how to prepare, how to treat, and where to invest your money. It's using technology to make you bigger yields and therefore make you bigger money. Go to www.pattern.ag to learn more. They are pioneering the way in predictive agronomy. Well, greetings and welcome to another fantastic episode of the Business of Agriculture. We have a topic for you today that I have been on the fringe of for quite some time. In my live presentations, I have oftentimes said, you know what, in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see as big of evolutions in production agriculture as we've seen in the last 100. And it's going to come from technology and our understanding. It's also going to come from our understanding of soils. I believe we've been working against the soils in large part for the last 100 years since the modern age of science in agriculture. The big thing is, I believe in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see as big of advancements as we've seen in the last 100 years, which is as great as the technological advancements we've made in the first 9,900 years. The point is, our pace of change and our productivity has multiplied significantly just in the last 90 years in agriculture. One of the things I also point out to my live audiences is quite simply this. For us to get there, we're going to see more people coming from outside of agriculture into agriculture. That is something that, for the most part, has not been a reality. For the most part, folks are raised in agriculture, grow up in agriculture, work in agriculture, stay in agriculture. Well, with population changes, demographic changes, no more families of 9 like I'm from, less farmers because of consolidation, it's obvious that we're going to have to keep the innovation going, we're going to have to find people from outside of ag that come to this industry. And the great thing is, in the last few years, that is happening. Lots of outside funding, lots of outside minds looking at this industry and thinking, how can I contribute? One such person is Craig Ganssle. Craig has a company called Farmwave. And, I see a lot of different stuff with getting production of this podcast put together. And this one struck me because it's talking about reducing yield burn, reducing the yield that you've already produced to loss. And, that's a big thing when you think about it, dear listener. They used to make a joke about a certain brand of combine made by, well, I'm not going to tell you who, but anyway, they called it the portable feed grinder. And they just said, the combine, it got through the crop just fine, but also ground up a bunch of their corn, spit it out the back. Again, that's wasteful. You're using the resource to make the crop. Now let's actually keep the crop. Well, that's one of the big takeaways or big benefits. And he's going to tell us more about this, but I want to get into the bigger topic of technology and innovators coming to our space from outside our space. So that's one of the big takeaways. So a few themes today: the actual technology he's employing and deploying that you can deploy, and also the road to getting there, and then where the road ahead takes us. Jacob Smoker is our other guest. So it's Craig Ganssle with Farmwave, and then Jacob Smoker, who's a farmer in Northwest Indiana, about 90 miles from me. Turns out I drive by his farm all the time on my way to Chicago. So we're going to hear from him about the practical implications of where this all goes. We're going to hear about the founding. So Craig, go ahead and start with you. You're the founder of Farmwave. Give me they always say it the elevator speech, by the way. I hate it when people talk to me in elevators. Don't talk to me in an elevator, but do give me the minute shakedown on you, please.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Damian. I'm a technologist. I do not come from a farming background. I'm originally from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. If you ever heard of Bethlehem Steel Corporation, my family were all steel workers, all engineers working at the steel company. I've been in technology for almost 30 years and started in the military, then 15 years at Verizon. And I got into agriculture by accident. But Farmwave was one of the first artificial intelligence platforms to use image recognition and vision computing in agriculture to identify a multitude set of problems. One that we focus on mostly today is, as you said, harvest loss, using cameras to make counts every 3 seconds and tell you what you're losing and where it's coming from on the machine in real time.
All right. So a little bit more about the background. from a long line of steel workers to now providing something for a farmer in the Midwest like Mr. Smoker. That's a pretty big leap, man.
Yeah. I mean,
how did just give me at least two little baby steps along the way to that leap?
So I think grandparents were the last ones to grow up on farms. Came from families of 10, 12, kind of like you said, but then everybody kind of went working for Bethlehem Steel during the boom, and that was the grandparents were the last generation to farm. But I still knew my great grandmother who had 90 acres. I think Jake would call that a garden, but that was the farm right back in Pennsylvania. But I just sort of have kind of the engineering in my blood, I guess. And fast forward to years later, I met a guy here in Georgia, Bruce Raisa, longtime friend still to this day, who was a farm kid from Missouri who left the farm and went to work at marketing and agriculture. And he saw what I was doing in technology and said, dude, we need that on the farm. Yeah.
Interesting. And so the training that you had, and we're going to get to the actual product. You're what kind of an engineer? What's your
technology
training? Your training is what?
Yeah, I've got a degree in business administration and computer science. My background is all hardware technology, routing, switching, wireless, infrastructure. And I actually was using artificial intelligence in the Marine Corps in the 90s.
Got it. So one of these products then that we're going to talk about today, the main product, I think, and why we have Mr. Smoker on here is how long has it been available? Let's talk about the number one product, okay?
Sure. It's really just been available since last year. Okay. We took a minimum viable product to market, and this year we're actually commercializing. But we've been building it for about 8 years, 6 years of R&D, 2 years of prototyping in the field. And Jake's farm was the very first farm we ever set foot on to try it out. And he could probably tell you about how crazy he thought we were and what we were doing.
So I want to hear about that. So we're talking about the yield loss, the technology to reduce yield loss. How did you're from Pennsylvania, there's stuff in your bio about Georgia and you down there, and how did all of a sudden end up in northern Indiana?
I think it was, if I remember correctly, I think it was actually a guy named Kyle Morrow on Twitter who saw what we were trying to do and what we were doing. And he's like, man, this is crazy. And I reached out to Kyle and was like, hey, can you hook me up with a farmer in your area? Because down here in Georgia, we've got a lot of farmers, but it's mostly cotton, peanuts, and not quite the row crops and the things that we were looking to get into. Mm-hmm. And he said, yeah, I got somebody that wouldn't mind you crazy people coming out here and trying your wacky tech. And so that's how we ended up on Jake's farm.
All right. So fast forward from here to Jake Smoker, Indiana farmer, 4th generation. Like I said, I've been driving by your farm for as long as I've been making the trek from Huntington to Chicago. And now of course, there's not a lot of people named Smoker. So I kind of putting two together when we started logging on here. We don't know each other until we just met here for this recording, but I know a little bit about your background. You said 4th generation. You're wearing a Purdue shirt, so you're not opposed to engineering in the ag space. Give me a little background.
Yeah, so I grew up on a farm, 4th generation there. Cattle is our main bread and butter, along with row crops. I went to Purdue for horticultural production and agricultural economics, a double majored there, and then took a job in Chicago, working downtown in Chicago for a number of years. It was a fun time. I learned a lot, but it wasn't once it's in your blood, you can't get away from the farm for too long. Married a girl that also grew up on a farm, and we said we didn't want to raise a family up in Chicago. So an opportunity came where we could get back on the farm. And I was able to come into the operation and slowly invest into the operation over the last decade or so, coming back now.
So you said someone got a hold of you and said, we've got this piece of technology that's going to reduce yield loss. And you're like, oh, good God, here's another pitch. Because remember, they're always going to tell you, if you're a farmer, here's how you can make more yield, or here's how you can reduce loss. What's the other big pitch? I don't know. Work less, bigger equipment. They love bigger equipment. They love more, bigger, and shinier equipment. What else, Jake?
There's always something else that's going to light the world on fire. And yeah, next thing you know, we're all controlling things from computers, sitting in our office with our feet kicked up.
Which, by the way, that's happening a great deal more now than it
Yes.
was 5 years ago. And it's sure as hell happening a great deal more now than it was 25 years ago or 50 years ago. So the idea that you're going to be sitting in your office on a computer doing farm work is hardly far-fetched. You're doing it now.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So what was the pitch to you? You said, all right, somebody's bringing me a new idea for some technology. And did you even know this guy?
No, we had never met. And Kyle was a good friend. We've done some trialing work with new technology, mostly products, different things like that, through Kyle's company. And he got a hold of me and said, "Hey, there's a friend of his, somebody he's met that was wanting to do this kind of stuff. I'm genetically disposed to trying new stuff, though. My grandfather and great grandfather would, whatever new technology out west that was cattle related, they'd bring it in and try to implement it this side of the Mississippi. So I've always had the bug in me of whatever's new and up and coming. We got to have it, got to see it, and got to try it on our farm. So that's how we kind of got started.
All right. So someone that pitched you on this, how big is your experiment with Craig's product?
So when it first started, when they first came out, it was a few GoPros and some conduit junction boxes with magnets. And his team came out with a SUV driving through the field as we're doing soybeans. And Craig was riding in the cab with me, showing the pictures and showing what the data that they were collecting. They never stopped our progress, which was really nice. It was seamless data collection, and they spent a couple days with us digging through the field, watching what we were doing. And then they took that data back, and it was few months later, they kind of started to say, "Hey, here's what we're seeing, here's what we're showing," and then started to really go back and forth of what should an interface look like, how should this function on a combine. The earlier prototypes, then the following harvest season, we had them on the combine, and we started to be able to take that data that was coming in and then tweak it and change our settings on the combine to really maximize grain in the tank. And so that was the evolution of it. And then last fall, we got the first product that went to market, installed that on the combine and ran with it a full season.
Craig, there's all kinds of data collection going on modern combines. There's more computers on a modern combine than there are threshing machines or separation equipment. The belly of the computer is hardly the focus anymore. And I'm not being anybody mean. Let's face it, they're amazing machines. But the focus of the last decade or so has been all about data, computers, all that kind of stuff. You're kind of entering a crowded space, pal.
Yeah, kind of. But in some ways, and I mean this with great respect, it's still outdated. Here's an example. I was on a phone call yesterday, and I was explaining our product and what we do.
Craig, you know what I really like? I like people that have balls, and that you just sat on the Business of Agriculture podcast and told the people at John Deere that they suck. I really like that. Okay, you didn't say any of that. You just said, you paused and you said, okay, but let's face it, some of this stuff is actually outdated, and you're going to back it up now. And I like that. So I was just jacking with you a little bit, but I do.
No,
I do. It takes a lot of backbone to be an entrepreneurial person going up against the likes of multinational corporations that have, if you got 3 employees or 7, they got you out. They got you beat by thousands. And so I think that's I like the backbone. I like it. I like the moxie.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. Especially somebody who doesn't come from a farming background, right? I'm not a farm kid from somewhere. So,
but that's good. But that's why I think this is good. You're coming at it without bias.
I'm coming at it saying, here's the question that got asked to me yesterday on a phone call. When are we going to get off the CAN network? Why can't Farmwave integrate directly with the machine? And I'll tell you why. Our cameras do 4 trillion operations per second. We're running multi-gig every 3 seconds. The CAN network, kilobit controller cards, right? Not even megabit, kilobit controller cards. They could never handle the data that we're throwing at them right now. That's how outdated they are. Why do we still use CAN? It's extremely stable. Absolutely. Industry standard. I totally get it. But at some point, somebody in the OEM world's going to move on to Ethernet, and they're going to really start being able to use data like faster than ever before. That's why we had to build something that is completely standalone, works on any make model machine, because we can't integrate. They simply couldn't handle the data right now.
Right. By the way, for those of us that have degrees in agricultural economics, not engineering technology, what's the gigabyte? What are all those things you were talking about right there? How much you said?
Right.
Would you say 800 times? Just the point is, compared to what technology might currently exist in a modern combine at the smoker farm, and what you're bringing, how much better, faster, bigger is it?
10 megabits per second versus 1,000.
So 100 times more. See, I was able to do that in my head, Jake. Did you notice that? And I never worked in a Chicago brokerage office, but I was able to do that math in my head right there. Are you impressed?
Very much so.
Does it work? First off, it's not probably perfected yet, Mr. Smoker. Is it? Or where are we on this? You were there from the very beginning, aluminum foil and duct tape and a concept, and you now are Gen 2 on this. Where are we, in your opinion, as the guy driving the combine, between where it needs to go and where it is right now?
From a row crop standpoint, soybeans and corn, wheat, the model's spot on. It works. I've seen it and I've doubted it, and then got out of the combine cab and checked myself. It's spot on. It's working, and it's constantly evolving and getting better too. And I know they're working on a lot of different other crops and stuff, but as far as soybeans and corn go, it's dead on. So much better than the old technology of impact sensors on the back end of a combine.
Okay, so I want to get into how it works don't put on a white jacket and we'll get into how it works. I want to get in where this goes. I also want to talk about the funding and the money, because you're going up against some Goliaths. And I want to talk about what you see in the way of the future, Craig and Jake. Before I do that, I want to remind you that you probably have questions if you're in production agriculture, if you serve production agriculture. So the point is, if you listen to the Business of Agriculture podcast, you probably either farm or call on farmers or work in the food chain somehow, obviously. Lots of questions go around being unanswered or difficult to answer. So my buddy Rob Syke founded a company called AgVisor Pro. It's an app on your phone. We're talking about technology right here. We're talking about how a lot of the stuff that we do is fairly antiquated. Craig just informed us that. Well, you know what else is antiquated? Going on Twitter in your self-driving combine and typing in something like, hey, I was wondering, anybody out there on #AgTwitter ever seen this? And you get a bunch of peanut gallery. Do you want them to ridicule you? Oh, you dumbass, you ain't never seen that? Why don't you go on an intelligent platform like AgVisor Pro, where all of a sudden you can get good answers to questions. You know what? Folks that actually can answer your questions. In fact, you can become an expert on the AgVisor Pro app. So it's very simple. Just go on your smartphone. I know you have one. You're probably using it right now to listen to this podcast. After you're done listening, after you've heard all from us, go on there and download the AgVisor Pro app. You can use it to get answers, and you can also be an answerer, and you can even get to where you can monetize this. There you go. If you shorten time and distance, you make more money and you are more productive. AgVisor Pro helps you shorten time and distance to the answers, between the questions you have and the answers you need. All right. How's it work? In layman's terms.
It's magic.
I like it.
Or as we say, magic, right?
Yeah, right.
Now, there's on a full combine setup.
By the way, to the listener that didn't see that, you did some hand maneuvers, very a la David Copperfield. So I want to make sure that you get credit for being a geeky engineer type, that you actually get the credit for your attempt at humor, because it was not lost on me. But the person driving down the road listening to this, or the person like Jake that just drives around equipment that steers itself all day, he didn't see it. Anyway, go ahead.
Right. Yes. My silly hand gestures. So you got cameras, 2 on the header, on the back side of the header, that are magnet mounted. They're looking straight at the ground. You've got 1 on the rear of the machine. Typically, most machines, it's on the axle. It's pointed upward, looking at the spreader chopper area. The ones on the behind the header are every 3 seconds are taking a picture of the ground. The one on the back is taking a picture every 3 seconds, looking up at what's coming out of the spreader chopper area in flight before it ever hits the ground. Each picture, when it's taken, drops a geotag. But then that picture is analyzed. It counts the kernels in the picture, does the math based off the viewing area, or what we call the AI zone, how many kernels are in a bushel, whether it's corn or soybeans, and brings it up on a display and tells you we saw X number of kernels from this part of the machine or this part of the machine, and you're losing approximately X bushels per acre. That happens by each camera every 3 seconds, comes to about 144 times an acre. You don't have to stop. You don't have to get out. You just keep on rolling. And it comes right to a touchscreen display in the cab.
And so what the purpose of it was all about reduction of loss, right? That was your when you set out, because it's always like, all right, it's neat to be an innovator or be entrepreneurial minded, but what problem do you seek to solve? You sought to solve loss of yield.
Correct. Yep.
And that's from mechanical generally, unless Jake waits until the crop is absolutely past its prime, he's got shatter or whatever. It's generally mechanical. Am I right, Jake? So really, it's a mechanical problem that we seek to improve upon.
Mechanical as well as header loss in soybeans. When you talk about dryness and shatter, it can be difficult to shut a machine down at 4 o'clock in the afternoon when it's still nice out. But you start to watch that loss coming on shatter, and you go, "What? I need to pause and wait until the dew sets."
Yeah, and so a person that's not quite familiar with what we're talking about in a nutshell, it just means the soybeans, for instance, get so dry when the machine goes through or the reel hits them, they blow up. So all of a sudden these soybeans are hitting your windshield and they're not getting in the hopper, right?
Yep, exactly.
Okay, so aside from that, generally the loss that we seek to correct or improve upon is because of mechanical means. Does this system work, Jake? You saw it. You're convinced it works.
Here, I'll give you a good example of what we saw. The kit, the latest version of the kit came to us in the fall. We had already started on some early season beans. So I had already got the combine set on about 300 acres. I had it set to where I thought it was going to be, it was running good for my tolerance levels. We switched fields, put the kit on, the Farmwave kit on, and got into we were running dryland beans, switched into irrigated beans. I didn't have my grain cart driver that day. And usually he's the guy behind me getting out on the radio and watching and seeing what's going on. I didn't have him that day, started into the field, and these are long row passes. Started to see loss coming up on the Farmwave system. I thought it was just because I was opening the field up, didn't really pay it much attention, got about 5 acres in, started through a long pass, and I was still showing a lot of loss, more loss than what, I was thinking I should have out the back. I think I was showing around 7 bushel out the back, which I shouldn't be having.
And that's just for percentage wise, 7 bushel on, this is corn?
On irrigated beans. So we were running
beans.
About,
so is that 80 bushel beans?
70 or so.
So you're still sitting 10% out the back.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And so it caused me to stop, get out, look at it. And then the cool thing was then I could sit there in the cab and change settings as I'm going through the field and start watching on the monitor what I needed to fix. If I made an adjustment to fan speed, was that actually the right adjustment? You got a hierarchy in your book that you kind of go through. I ended up being able to basically dial that loss down to almost 0. So you talk about almost a 6 bushel difference.
Like you started out by saying, okay, first off, this adjustment, now this adjustment. Okay, now this adjustment. And how many acres till you got it figured out?
It was less. It was in that same pass, so less than an acre. I had it dialed in. I never had to get back out of the cab. Never had to do anything like that. And I knew what I was getting was accurate. Instead of the grain cart driver, he's good, but him getting out and kicking the ground and going, yeah, it looks about right. So it's a measurable that we can adjust and change as we need to.
Craig Ganssle, founder of Farmwave, answer me this. Okay, Jake just he just reduced 7 bushel on $14. Again, I'm going to call that roughly $110, $14 to $15. And I did that math in my head again, Jake, so check me. That sounds really good. It sounds like maybe too good. And here's the thing. You're like, okay, I don't think I'm losing 7 bushels out the back. I mean, maybe Jake's just slow. He spent too much time in Chicago. I think I'm losing like half a bushel out the back. I don't have as much of a need for this. Who's right?
Jake's right.
You think there's more loss going on than the grain cart driver can calculate?
Yeah, the statistics again, if we're going to back it up with the data, $2 billion every year worth of just corn in just the United States in just 1 year are left.
That's going out. That's going out the back of the machine.
A lot of deer feed, right?
Yeah,
and
well, I mean, it's good for the deer and the rabbits, but it's not so good for bottom line.
And part of the problem solving early on was everybody's saying ag tech startups, just like me. I'm just as guilty. We need to grow X more food by 2030 than we have in the last whatever to feed the world. And you start really looking at the data, and it's not really true, right? And I've got farmers that will say, look, I get up every day to make money like everybody else. If I feed the world, great, but I get up every day to make money like everybody else. So I started looking at the problem from a different angle, going, well, what about instead of producing more, we reduce the waste? Right? Farmers like Jake are spending how much money, how much time, effort, planting, spraying, everything they put into their field every year. When it's time to take it out, why just blaze through the field, get what you get?
If you're listening to the audio, you're not watching the video. I just threw my arms up in some sort of somewhere between exaltation and a hallelujah moment, because this is what I say all the time. My exact point is you people are focused on make more, produce more, because farm people have been trained from the time they were born, from the industry and from their parents and grandparents. Gotta make more. How many bushels they get? Well, you know what? Jake only got 70 bushels of soybeans. I got 74. You got to go around and brag about that. Your point, Craig, is dead on. You've already spent the money on the inputs. You've already spent the time. That combine he has costs more than $50. So you've got this exceedingly high equipment cost. At this point, exceedingly high input of land cost. I mean, I'm not in the good farm ground like Jake. He's over there where it's like $16,000, $18,000 an acre. I'm over here in, Huntington, Indiana. So I'm off. Anyway, the point is, joking aside, boatloads of money is already and time is already allocated, and then you're allowing loss. So I really appreciate what you're saying. 7 bushels, on the soybeans. You said the number at 2 billion on a percentage basis. Because, it's a neat thing for sales to say, Craig, $2 billion worth of corn. And then, of course, the skeptic is going to say, well, that's at $7 corn. If it's only $4 corn where we might be heading, that's not. On a percentage basis, you're still losing. Is it 5%? Is it 10%? Is it 10%?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of variables, right? But I think because of those variables, that's where Farmwave helps, right? The conditions change. Just like Jake said, it changed when he went from one field to another field. Conditions changed throughout the day. Yep. And the old method, the hand count or drop pans, nothing wrong with it, but stopping, getting out, and then you make that change, then you go, then you got to stop again, get out, see if it worked. If it didn't, make changes, and you just repeat that process. And we were like, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way that farmers can just roll and look at this in real time. And if they make that change, they can see right away. Next 3 seconds, here comes the next picture. Boom. Did it go down or not? Oh, it's going down. Next 3 seconds, 6 seconds. Oh, it's going down. And that's what we set out to build.
I know you leaned up like you wanted to say something. So finish whatever you wanted to contribute there. And I have another question for both of you.
Oh, I just was going to say, in the simplicity of it, I think we tend to overcomplicate things, and the more stuff that we can put on, the better. It's very simple and very easy to use. And that's how you can make those rapid changes through the field. You're not digging through muck.
You've not made a lot of these. There are, I'm holding up my swing line staple gun. It ain't changed a lot. It hasn't really had to. And they make these things by the bushel basket, right? Whatever. You haven't made a lot of these. If I want to get one of these things right now, I'm recording this in the spring of 23. If I want one of these on my machine by the time I roll on wheat, or certainly by the time I roll on soybeans come, say, September and Jake and I's part of the world, or early October, can I get one of these contraptions and put it on my equipment?
You can. We're shipping starting in June this year.
Okay. And technology is a pretty difficult thing. If Jake has a problem on his combine, I'm going to guess he probably, unless it's a flat tire, he probably doesn't fix it. And he may not even fix the flat tire because we've gotten such elaborate machines. Am I right? You don't fix your combine. There's a tech from the company that has he's got probably $400,000 of equipment on his truck that he can just come out and plug in. And people think I'm making that up. That's not made up at all, right?
No, it's what's necessary anymore.
So you can't stick one of these things on your combine, can you?
I installed the whole system myself under an hour in the middle of harvest season.
Okay, big question. Sometimes these companies don't like to play nice in the same sandbox. Did he just negate some of his warranties on his combine by installing the Farmwave system?
No, it's completely standalone. It doesn't integrate with the machine at all. It just requires power. That's it.
Okay. And then money, if it's okay. I want to get one of these. And I'm assuming there's a little variation based on the size of machine or some other bells and whistles. What am I talking about?
If you just want to focus on the rear of the machine, we have 3 systems: 1 camera, 2 camera, 3 camera, 16,000, 18,000, 20,000. So it's just difference of how many cameras that you want.
Was that a dollar amount you just tossed at me?
Dollar amount, yes. Okay. $16,000, $18,000, or $20,000. And then after that, 1 camera, 2 camera, 3 camera. After that, there's $1,000 annual subscription, and that is all inclusive. We don't care how many acres, unlimited data storage, features, support, the cellular costs. It does work at the edge. It does not require connectivity to the cloud to work. But we are introducing cellular this year for dealers and operators and farmers that have more than 1 combine. They can check in on the other combines remotely and see how they're doing. If they have an unskilled operator or somebody new to driving the combine, they can see on their phone or tablet or whatever and make a phone call and go, hey, you're losing 15 bushel off the left side of the header. What the heck are you doing? Make some changes, right?
That's a big deal. Somebody, Jake's, he's in the 1 combine and he can't get any help because it's Sunday. And he says, I'm going to call that flunky Damian Mason up and let him run this machine. And he doesn't have any idea what he's doing. He can monitor me. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
What system did you put in, Jake, for the heading into 2023 season? You got the 3 camera, 1 camera, 2 camera?
Three cameras all the way. For us to watch a 40-foot grain table, either side of it, and then also the loss out the back, it was necessary for us to go that route.
How many machines do you run?
Watch it. 2.
So you have them on both combines?
Eventually there will be.
Yeah.
The other combine's a little break glass in case of emergency.
Okay. So it's going to get replaced?
Eventually, yeah. It's getting tired.
I see. Money, let's talk also about money. For this thing to go and for this thing to get where you want it to go, and I said, we kicked this off, Craig, about me telling my audiences for the last couple of years, we're going to see more innovation come from outside of ag. It's already happened. All the biologicals, Jake knows this. There's more biologicals than he can count, and that was generally funded from outside of ag. New soil treatments, and then some new machinery stuff. Do you have investors from outside ag that said, we want you to make this go?
Most of my investors are from outside ag. Yeah.
And then, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, it's my own money. I have 3 private investors, 2 here in Atlanta, 1 in North Carolina, that have funded us for the majority of the years of this R&D. And just last year, 4th quarter, we brought on a Series B. We brought on 2 institutional partners, 3 Bridges Capital and High Point Capital.
Good for you. Take me to 1 year or 2 years from now or 3 years from now. Are you just sitting back, smoking big cigars and saying, look at this. I knew it was going to take off. Where's it go?
Sprayers, planters, onto more machinery. We actually built tech early on. It's in beta right now. Image recognition and vision compute, put it on a sprayer, stand counts, plant counts, droplet size, nozzle performance, drift, pest, disease. We've actually built alpha and beta algorithms in AI that can do some of that. Actually, it all started a long time ago on a mobile device, like a crop scouting app. And all we said was, how do we take this off a mobile device and stick it on a piece of machinery? And that's what we started doing. But right now we're only 11 people. We want to stay focused on harvesting. We believe that's where the most value is for the farmers. But we intend to resurrect some of that tech that we have patents in, and look at what we can do with sprayers. We've got some people right now, they're actually knocking down our door wanting the sprayer stuff now. And we're like, we're not ready for it. And they're like, we'll pay for it. We're like, well, we're not ready for it just yet. And they're like, well, how do we get it? Like, we got partners in Australia and other parts of the world that really are after us, because this is this whole sustainability push, right? And monitoring what's going out and how much of it, when, and the accountability for the farmers. And we want to be able to provide that sort of seamless integration all the way around.
It's exactly where I wanted to go with this, was that you have a sustainability story to sell and tell here, because Jake didn't use less resources. He used the same amount of resources. He just gleaned everything that he actually had in the field. So there, boom, you saved resources because you got everything you actually produced. Reduces food waste. Boom, there's your number one. Number two, obviously, input of resources. You can go through that. So, I mean, you've got a real angle here on where this future looks like it's going. And actually, it doesn't look like it. It is going there. Those of us that keep our finger on the pulse of this. So I think that's a great story. Does this kind of thing excite you? I mean, you're 35. You're at that right age of adoption. Does a 65-year-old farmer adopt this?
I tell you what, who's more excited about this is my 65-year-old father. And he was asking when that system was coming last fall, because he was going to put it on himself. If not, he was going to drive to Georgia and get it. He gets so excited when it comes to this kind of stuff. And I think because of the ease of use and everything else, it's easy for all generations to adopt. And this is the next step in agriculture. It really is. To reduce the waste, to reduce the loss, and when Craig talked about the sprayer stuff, I've seen what's coming. It's going to blow everybody away. It's so exciting what's coming in agriculture, and this is just the beginning. I
don't know, maybe Craig did a little homework and someone gave him some preparation, because he started speaking my language, and he said, instead of this going down the road about feed the world, I said, I've been hearing that my whole life. We produce more than enough to feed the world. You know what we do? We waste a bunch of it. And so I love that you went right there without even my prodding, if you will. If somebody wants to learn more about this, where do they go?
Farmwave.io.
Farmwave, yep. Meaning like the place where you live and like what you do when you see your neighbors, .io, farmwave.io. His name is Craig Ganssle. He's accompanied by Jake Smoker, my new buddy that's about 80 miles away over there in the bottom end of LaPorte County. And until next time, I'm Damian Mason. Thanks for being here, guys.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Damian.
And this is the Business of Agriculture. Hey, thanks for being here. This episode of the Business of Agriculture was brought to you by Pattern Ag. You've heard me talk about Pattern Ag because I think it's a pretty cool concept. New technology that allows you to predict the problems you're going to have and therefore treat them before those problems cost you money. What kind of problems am I talking about? Pests and disease. Things like cordon rootworm, sudden death syndrome, cyst nematode, and a whole bunch of other bad things that happen out there in the field that can cost you money. Guess what? Pattern Ag will let you find out ahead of time if the disease or the pest pressure is there, and therefore you're treating it before it costs you any money. What a great concept. Go to pattern.ag, that's www.pattern.ag, to learn more about their product, their technology, how it can make you money, save you yield, and also where you can find a rep that can come out there and do the work for you. Pattern.ag.